Welcome to the New Books Network.
Hello, welcome back to New Books in Medicine, a podcast channel on the New Books Network. My name's Claire Clark. I'm one of the hosts on this channel, and today we'll be speaking with Jimena Canales about her wonderful new book, Bedeviled, A Shadow History of Demons in Science. Jimena, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Claire. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I wonder if you could begin by telling us just a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm a historian of science and technology, and this is my third book. My first book is A Tenth of a Second, a history, and I joke that it's the longest book ever written about the shortest period in history. And my second book is called The Physicist and the Philosopher, Einstein, Bergson, and the Debate That Changed Our Understanding of Time. And it takes the topic is a famous meeting in April 6, 1922, between Albert Einstein and the person who was at the time one of the most famous philosophers in Europe, Henri Bergson. And it's an account of their differing notions of what time was and who had the authority to speak about it. And Bedeviled is my third book, and I have to say it's really the book that I wanted to write all along. So I'm very happy that it's out and done.
Oh, so how did you come to write it? If this is one you've been thinking about for a long time, huh?
I have. I mean, one of the things that struck me even as a graduate student when I started studying the history of science was that many of the scientists that I studied and when I read their technical research papers used the word demon when they didn't understand something completely. And these questions, these demons, very frequently became named, they were giving the name of famous scientists. So the last name of Descartes, René Descartes, the famous philosopher, he gave birth to Descartes' demon. And there were subsequent other demons, Laplace's demon, named after Pierre-Simon Laplace, Maxwell's demon, named after James Clerk Maxwell. So for many, many years, I started collecting the references to demons in scientists' own work. And obviously, this seemed pretty counterintuitive to me. Why did they refer to use that term so constantly?
Yes. And so each of these great thinkers had his own demon, and for each one, it kind of it symbolized the limits of science, the limits of rationality, the limits of what they could understand.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not. But they aren't like metaphorical demons. Anyway, can you say more about them and why the book is a shadow history?
Thank you. So yes, they're not metaphorical. It's a literal term, a term that the scientists themselves used. But I found as I collected the references that they really served as a way to understand the development of science more generally. Across the book covers 4 centuries, so it starts with Descartes' demon in the 17th century, and it goes pretty much close to the present. So these imaginary creatures really drove scientific research forward because, as you say, whenever a scientist proposed a theory, there was something that this theory didn't cover in its entirety. And so one example is Einstein's demon, which became a label to refer to quantum mechanics. So after Einstein developed his theory of relativity, there were still some issues that theory couldn't really explain the world of subatomic physics, and it drove research forward. So these imaginary creatures, in a sense, show us what gets done in history. Yeah.
So each breakthrough has a kind of shadow, has a kind of a dark side, something that's unknowable. And so it's like, I was as I was reading, I was thinking it's not just, it's a history of demons in science, but it's also a really sort of creative way of telling the history of science, because it's a history of science not through sort of knowledge
Mhm.
or, being slowly amassed, but a history of science through the limits of science, really.
Absolutely. And going back to your question of the shadow. So one of the frustrating and fascinating things about being a historian of science is that um, um, it's very common to encounter scientists who say that they never were able to foresee the effects of their research. They were never able to foresee the technologies that came from their initial investigations. So there's something about the history of science and technology understood broadly that appears a little bit irrational, that it's not guided and it's not controlled and it surprises people. So I wanted to understand that better as a historian and philosopher of science, with the hope that we can get a better grasp on the development and understand better where we're going and what we're doing and for what reason. And the demons seem to me a way to get at this unconscious drive, because nobody had really told the history of these demons, although they're so prevalent, and and because they explain so well, they appear in places of important discoveries and great historical transformations. So that's where the shadow label comes in.
Well, and another really interesting thing about these demons is that they all cast a really long shadow. So it's not like it's sort of the history goes in chronological order, starting with Descartes and then moving forward in time. But the demons don't they don't get replaced one right after the other, right? Like they are all sort of continue to live on all the way up to the present day. So can you say a little bit about why in the 21st century should we be taking
Great,
demons
great question.
seriously?
Thank you so much. So yes, you're absolutely right. And let me start with the example of the first one, because I believe it is still one of the most important. And Descartes' demon was thought up by René Descartes in one of the most famous texts of philosophy, his first meditation. It's a text that some of us know or has become famous because it introduced the phrase "cogito ergo sum." I think, therefore I am. And in that text, Descartes tried to get at the very basic roots of rationality, which were the things that were not up for debate or doubt. So one reads the book today, and it's a little bit weird because he has these very simple things. For example, that 2 plus 3 equals 5, that a triangle is made of 3 pieces and 3 angles, that a circle is the circumference around a point. And you're like, okay, well, why does somebody have to write, this book about such basic truths? But the reason why Descartes did it, and the reason because that the book became so important and became the founding text of modern philosophy, was because he wondered, he questioned, what if a demon came and took over his senses? What if it installed a virtual reality in front of you? How then would you be able to figure out what was true in this world, given those circumstances? But what's interesting, and what I do in the book, is I place Descartes in the context of the new theater technologies and new media, including novels like El Quixote, that was referenced by Descartes when he wrote these pages. So Descartes was already very concerned with a world of spectacle and entertainment and science and media that, from our perspective, theater and theatrical tricks and having fireworks and automata get on stage, it seems, very, very low tech and nothing that we need to worry about. But they were real innovations at the time. And it was one of the first times that we started thinking about, fake news, fake reality. So Descartes' demon then continues to come up. It's a figure that is used frequently by philosophers who still want to get at, what is the basic thing that our brain can do, and how can we fend ourselves against the, being deceived, being deceived through our senses. So that's one aspect, but it also drives research into, well, how can we actually go and deceive our reality, put an alternative reality, and that drives, I think, pretty much up to this day, research into virtual reality technologies. From the Oculus Rift to theater and cinema that install a reality and take us to a different world.
And
So yes.
Oh, and right. So there's the very first demon, Descartes' demon, has to do with technology. But actually, I mean, it seems all of the
They
demons
all
are
do.
yeah, right, are related
Mm-hmm.
to particular technologies, like I'm thinking with Laplace, computers, but
Mm-hmm.
also to kind of the history of technology in general and themes
Yes.
and the history of technology.
Yes. Yes, no, that's right, and that's why I turned to the term demon in order to try to figure out. It's very difficult when one looks at the history of technology and say, like, we can find links that take us from the steam engine to the microchip little by little. But why is it that nobody thought that the microchip at the time of the steam engine thought that the microchip was going to be invented? There's an essential unpredictability and an essential lack of awareness and consciousness into how technology develops, and nobody gets it right. Not even science fiction writers. It's and I thought that perhaps getting at these other drives, these unconscious drives of scientists, these big questions could help us understand the way things have gone. Yeah,
Right. So after Descartes, the next demon is, am I saying the name right? Laplace.
perfect.
Laplace
Hmm.
is that okay? And this one is really most closely linked to computers
Yes.
and artificial
Hmm.
intelligence. So could you tell us a little bit how about the kind of the history of this demon and what it represents?
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, so Laplace demon was a creature of the French Revolution, and the name refers to Pierre Simon Laplace, who was one of the most famous scientists of the time. He was a professor to Napoleon, who actually gave him a scientific post at one point in his life. And Laplace was known for two great volumes on the history of astronomy, Mécanique Céleste, and he really was responsible for thinking about the loss of motion in the universe in terms of some sort of clockwork and writing the equations for it. And Laplace had an idea, again a conjecture. He said, what would happen if there was an intelligence, and he used the word intelligence, not demon. It became named a demon afterwards, which is very frequently the case. The same thing happened with Descartes. So Laplace wondered, what if there was an intelligence that was big enough that it could knowing the position of every atom in the world and knowing the loss of motion, it would compute the data. And then he said this intelligence would potentially know the development of the universe into the future, and also, given the equations, you could tell all of the past that led to that future, that very determinate future. So Laplace's idea proved extremely fascinating. He's also known as the founder of statistics, and some of the first researchers and people to actually build computers, like Charles Babbage, referenced his brilliant idea and tried to bring it to life. So just as Descartes' demon was. Many researchers tried to bring him to life in terms of new virtual reality machines. Laplace's demon was brought to life in terms of big calculators that could, many years later after Laplace had this initial idea, these big calculators were part of our technological universe, and they could compute numbers in a way that had Laplace had sort of just dreamt. Yeah.
Yeah. So each of the demons kind of gives. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself here. I want to jump. I was about to jump to the 20th century, but let's talk about Maxwell's demon first. So James Clerk Maxwell's demon. He's the most famous. Why?
He's the one that researchers still are most fascinated with. And he was a creature of the Second Industrial Revolution. References to him and when he was named date to the 1870s. And again, he wasn't named by Maxwell. It was others that named him and gave him that label. And he came up in speculations about thermodynamics and how engines work. So scientists at that time had come up with the laws of thermodynamics that we learn in school. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, and you can't have a perpetual motion machine. You can't create work out of a difference in temperature. And those laws were considered to be founding principles of physics and science, but there were exceptions to those laws. People could create engines, and people can create refrigerators. So there are moments in which you can reverse these basic laws of science and actually create a situation in which one part of a room, an isolated container, gets colder, and another one gets hotter. These temperature based machines or engines are drive and power everything from cars to thermostats. And Maxwell's demon was actually the name of the creature who could create these reversals, these thermodynamic reversals, these temperature reversals. And again, it was such a fascinating idea that scientists raced to understand this demon better and to build better machines and figure out engine efficiency and why refrigerators work and how to get as close as possible to building a perpetual motion machine. And he comes up still in research about energy efficiency. So he's definitely the one that most people know about, most scientists know about. And if you Google him, you'll see, every once in a while, a month or two, there's a new article about Maxwell's demon being built in a new way in some new laboratory.
Really? So in scientific laboratories today, they're building Maxwell's demon?
They are
Really?
building
Yeah.
Maxwell's demons.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
it's still one of the driving research goals to create more and more efficient motors and energy systems that dissipate less heat and energy from inside computers, microchips, to quantum computers. Yeah, that take advantage of Brownian motion movement of the molecules and therefore make our world more efficient.
What's Brownian motion?
Brownian motion is one of the plays a role has a important place in the book because it is connected to Maxwell's demon, and it's the natural movement of molecules that they move back and forth at incredible speeds. And scientists at one point noticed if there was little dust or pollen on a drop of water that it jiggles to and fro. And they wondered if they could use this jiggling of the little particles to create perpetual motion machines and perfect motors. And what they figured out as they were studying Brownian motion and Maxwell's demon was that as you scaled up these effects and as you try to harness the energy of vibrating molecules all around us, the movement disappeared. But again, it's sort of there was the dream of coming as close as possible to building a Maxwell's demon. Yeah, that.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. So that does this lead us into? Can we talk about Einstein for a little bit? Does this?
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is a story of the book is a story of demons in science, and we go through Descartes and Laplace and Maxwell, and then we get to Albert Einstein. And in the story of demons in science, you call him the exorcist.
Mm-hmm.
So, can you tell us how so? How is he an
Thank you, Claire.
exorcist?
So again, I'm a very. This book is very. It reads as very magical and fairy tale like,
Yeah.
but it does so by sticking very close to the actors, the categories that the actors used at the time. So Einstein was called an exorcist by the man who made him famous, which is the British astronomer Arthur Eddington. And Einstein himself did not use the word demon. Again, that is frequently a part of this pattern. But others ended up thinking of Einstein's demon as being the quantum and quantum mechanics. So Einstein was celebrated for having proved that certain demons didn't exist. He was celebrated by Eddington and others and called an exorcist. And the things that he exorcised were the notions of absolute time and space, which Einstein himself claimed they were ghostly notions that should be swept away from science because there was no proof that they actually existed. And yes, so that's the middle part of the book is the Einstein story as an exorcist and how his ideas dispel some demons, but then and he ends up hiding
Right.
unwittingly, coming up with another demon, which something that his own theory of relativity couldn't explain.
Right, exactly. So it's a little ironic. So he turns out sort of because he doesn't by the mid 20th century the demons are not gone, and in fact give that period gives birth to
Mm-hmm.
a lot of um, uh,
New demons,
new demons, right?
as
So
well as the period we see this accumulation. So they're the old ones that persist
mhm.
in research, and they're new quantum demons that act in very bizarre ways, and many of the ways that they act. So, for example, quantum demons refer to particles that can be in two places at once. They refer to phenomena. This is related to the Schrodinger cat example that can be dead and alive at the same time. They're incredibly fast. They jump from place to place without seemingly mechanical ways of traveling. So you can see already from my descriptions that these quantum demons share certain characteristics with the demons of fairy tales and the demons of religion. And that is frequently the case as well with the other demons.
And we didn't even we haven't touched on that at all. For the demons, although we say they're not wholly, they're quite literal, and in what in terms of what they represent.
Mm-hmm.
They do have different sort of. They do resonate with different religious traditions, and I wondered if you could say a little bit about how, I mean, if there are any themes or patterns in how they relate to religion. Are they displacing religion? Are they referring to religion? How are they different from a
Mm-hmm.
devil as we might think about
Yes.
them in Christianity, or those sorts of things?
Yes. So the scientists who mentioned these demons, some of them very explicitly said, this has nothing to do with religion. We're not talking about evil beings, and from the time of Maxwell's, when some scientists actually sort of reflected on their own use of the term, to when they were used in computers and Unix systems, and these are the daemon, a term that is widely used in software development. They say that the origins are traced back to the Greek term of demon, or the Greek use of demon, where they're mischievous, they can help, but they also hurt. They're tricksters, and that's the same role that they play in scientific research. When scientists are looking at the world and they see something that they don't understand, it's extremely natural in a sense that they had recourse to that old world, that word and that old concept of the demon to understand, try to understand better something. But they're creatures of the imagination. The scientists do not believe that they're real. They believe they can be investigated, and therefore they can be brought to life in one sense, as machines and technologies. But it's never the demon itself that is an existing entity. They're demons of the imagination. That's what they are. But for that very reason, I think they're extremely important in understanding this unconscious drive of the development of technology. And the fact that they're imaginary, in fact, is what gives them their power.
So, can you say more about that? How does the fact that they're imaginary give them their power?
Well, we rarely think about the role of the imagination in science. It's something that is often relegated to the study of science fiction or to literature. But the imagination plays a huge role in technical scientific literature, and that's where very frequently they use this label in order to propose things that don't exist but might exist. So one of the very weird things of in science is the notion of proving that something does not exist. That's a bit of an impossibility, because things can come to be, new things emerge, new discoveries happen. So there can be a point in time, where one discovers something that was believed to be non-existent. So the book is really one of the things that intrigued me and that I wanted to write about is also trying to understand in a better way how certain things that are deemed non-existent or not impossible become existent, are actually, and I think that that's central to innovation and creating new technologies. That new things are brought to life, and how do we understand the role of the imagination in bringing certain things to life and not others?
And so the history of demons is almost like, well, it's a way of because once we get about halfway through the book, you talked about quantum demons a bit, and that then the book gets into technological or technical developments, computer demons, and we can understand we can understand these how we can understand these developments by reading them through this sort of lens. Would you like to talk about any of the other technical developments? So you get into we talked a bit about AI, computers, genetics is another,
right.
The atomic bomb. There are a lot in here.
They are a lot, and the book gets a little bit more complicated as it goes along, because there are demons fighting with each other, demons combining with each other. So computers become a combination of Laplace's demon, which are big calculators, but they also have a little bit of Maxwell's demon, because they have input output devices in which they can change according to the environment. And then you have new demons coming up, and some of these new demons were software demons. And again, the term was used by software developers, and in the 1950s, some of the first researchers in AI decided to look at intelligence in computer intelligence in a new way. Up to then, it had mainly been understood by reference to Laplace's demon. So what a computer did was a big calculator that had an algorithm, and it followed the path of the algorithm that was prescribed from the very beginning. So in those machines, the builder of the machine always knew the outcome. You had certain data put in, and then you knew if the result was correct, if the machine was built correctly. But in the 1950s, they thought, well, this is limiting because we're only getting certain results that we already know. What about trying to build even more intelligent machines? And they thought that a way to change the architecture of computing software was to create little subroutines, software subroutines, basically if-then commands that they called daemons. And these lines of code, so these daemons are literally lines of code called daemons by those who program them, who follow if-then commands. And they are given tasks, and if they see a match in what they're asked to do, they're asked to holler or to shriek. Mm-hmm. And they're organized hierarchically in the computer program. So you have a new model of artificial intelligence that's based on hierarchy of daemons that shriek and potentially can give you results that you didn't even think of beforehand. So that's the model of AI, which is now fascinating and which led to neural networks and which powers most AI systems. And again, like all these other innovations from Descartes' demon or Maxwell's demon, they're both fascinating and scary. And that's the reason why they receive so much attention and focus, and why I believe that they do drive research forward in quite distinct and effective ways.
So they drive research forward, but they also have implications for research ethics. You
Yes.
conclude at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Could you say a little bit more about what those implications might be,
Mm-hmm.
and how they connect to the way that we tend to teach research ethics today?
Yes, thank you. So most of the discussion about ethics and technology is around use and implementation. Should we have self-driving cars? Should we have designer babies? And I think that by the time we're asking those questions, it is too late. These things are going to happen in some quarters. Some people are going to answer yes, and some people are going to answer no. And we will be in that caught in that ethical dilemma, because the question is already about use and implementation. So I wanted to take a step back and say, well, let's again look at ethical questions before technologies are already here, before they are built. Let's look at what technologies we've been imagining and hoping for. And let's try to start the discussion about ethics there. And I think that it's not a coincidence that the fact that demons have been these thought guides of our scientific imagination creates the sense that they're demons in the metaphorical sense in the world. So when very frequently when people discuss new technologies that are scary or that they're transformational, they think of them as demons. So AI is very frequently described by Elon Musk and other people as a demon or a Frankenstein or that's how out of control. So my hope is that better understanding how scientists are using their imagination, what are the categories that is framing their questions, we can get a bit of a better grasp on the metaphorical demons that scare us and that make the world a very complicated place in which to thrive.
Part of the argument about ethics is that it doesn't do any good to take the ethics out of science, right?
Mm-hmm.
That in a sense, this imaginative thinking, speculative thinking, that all of that is part of scientific discovery. It's not some separate thing over here that we can call research ethics. And so maybe there's a way in which maybe it shouldn't be exorcised necessarily. And then that leads to a conclusion about sort of how this shadow history might be relevant to the relationship between the sciences and the humanities.
Yes. Thank you. So definitely. I mean, I don't think that we should continue to see the imagination as belonging to a different realm that does not include science, that is limited to literature or poetry or the fantasticals, fairy tales, because it is those aspects that play an essential role in the most technical aspects of science. And my hope is that by writing this broad history of the scientific imagination across 4 centuries, that it can give us a far away and a distant panorama of where science is going. And again, this is not a book about. I'm not popularizing science. I think readers will learn a lot of science from it, but it is stepping back in order to give a broader picture where we see from a humanistic perspective, from a historical perspective, the development of science more broadly, and I believe that hopefully is one of the ways in which we can get a better grasp of what science are we doing and for what purpose, and what are the limits, what have been the limits of our imagination so far. So I believe, as an interviewer, you get certain answers when you ask certain questions, and I believe that when scientists are only asking certain questions to nature, they're only getting certain answers from it, and that if we think a little bit more carefully about what new questions we'd like to pose, we can understand this better and control it better, and make it a better practical activity.
And of course, that's true of historians too. I remember one of the professors when I was in grad school explaining archival research to me and saying the archive doesn't speak for itself. Like the archive only answers the question. The documents only answer the questions you bring to them.
Absolutely.
And the conclusion of the book, For the Risk of Sort of like Preaching to the Choir, is just a beautifully written call for integrating the humanities and the sciences together, history, philosophy, and science. That's my absolute favorite part of the book. I won't ruin it for our listeners. You should check it out for yourself. Jimena, we've taken up quite a bit of your time. Could you tell us what you're researching right now?
Yes, thank you, Claire. So one thing, I finished this book recently. I finished proofs during the pandemic. It's been a hard period, I think, for all of us to work. I think it was a fitting moment to finish this book that is a little bit dystopian, and that looks at the holes and the lacks of science, and what we wish it did better, and what we wish from it. I think it's the beginning sentence says, the glass of science is half empty, and I think that the pandemic in our current times have revealed that in a very stunning and depressing way. We can't seem to solve this virus problem. But I have been working on a new project, and this is a small book called Simply Einstein, and it's a book about Einstein and his life and his theory, and it is very daunting and challenging to write yet another book about someone who has received so much attention and so much has been written about him. But I think that I'm writing and I'm trying to write the simplest way of understanding his theory and the most brutally honest account of the scientist and his great scientific accomplishments. So I'm almost done.
Oh
with
wow! And so,
that.
and this is it's a short sort of is it for a different audience than you usually write for?
Yeah, yes. This would be even in young adults and people that have no background in science or the history of science. And it's a short book, around 60 pages, which makes the Einstein. There's a lot to say about him, so it makes the challenge greater. And again, just trying to give you the most concise and most honest portrayal about the man and the myth that I can.
That's wonderful. Simple, but not without nuance. So that I mean,
And
and
not
for
without originality. And this is primary research based, and of course a lot of secondary literature. But I think even specialists of Einstein's will find quite new things in it.
well, that sounds wonderful. That sounds like a wonderful project. Jimena, I want to thank you again for taking the time to come on the show and share your work with us.